let me talk about segmentation. So, like I said, when you start developing your go-to-market strategy, your business plan, your strategic marketing plan, you start with the core product, which is what we usually start with. Then we do segmentation, then targeting, and then we do the positioning. All right? So let's start with segmentation. And I said last time that as part of the class, we're going to do the segmentation for a couple of technologies, yeah? So we have this technology that your friend, your genius friend, created that basically converts heat to power with an efficiency that's much higher than the market. We called it unobtainium because we know nobody else is using that name. And basically, your first goal is to find out what product to develop and who's the market. And these usually go together. The segmentation and targeting exercises are going to help us do both. Okay? And I'm going to use this technology to drive the example. Now, you may or may not know, those of you interested in energy, that we actually waste, we the world, but this is specifically the United States, we waste more energy than we use productively. Every time a coal or gas power plant creates electricity, they actually waste anywhere from 40 to 70% of the energy goes literally up in smoke. Okay? That's called waste heat. In your car, unless you have an electric car, something like 80% of the energy in gasoline is actually wasted. Wasted down the tailpipe, in heat, or in braking. 80, maybe 85%, depending on whether it's a gasoline or a diesel engine. Okay? More energy is wasted than used productively. So there's a lot of room for us to do energy efficiency and actually take some of that heat and convert it back into usable power, which can be used for usable heat or air conditioning, right? So let me start the conversation about segmentation with the word value. Another word that is really abused in Silicon Valley, in business in general, okay? So let's just describe what I mean by value and what we're going to mean by value in this course. And the first thing is features versus benefits. What's a feature? A feature resides in the product, okay? So when you talk about 1024p, 802.11ag, or 10 base T, or whatever, you're talking about a feature. You're talking about a technology, okay? Now, a benefit resides in the customer. Now, that specific technology, that specific feature may or may not translate into a benefit, into value for a specific customer. A benefit is very specific to the very specific customer. Does that answer the question of the patent? You want to deliver a benefit, not necessarily that specific technology. Customers care about benefits. Okay? Very few solar PV customers know about the specific technology in the photovoltaics. Very few, if any. Or who makes the inverter, and what makes that inverter better than the other. What do they care about? Power. They care about power, clean power, and price. Does that make sense? Okay. Your job is to find the benefits that are priceless. Because the same feature could be useless to some and priceless to others. So that's our job. In the segmentation and targeting exercises, that's what we want to look for. Okay? Now, two more things: creating value versus capturing value. Again, creating value is very, very abused in the lingo in Silicon Valley. Everybody seems to create value, right? So let me see a show of hands. Who uses Facebook? Wikipedia? Gmail? Craigslist? YouTube? Wow. Who doesn't? That would be easier, right? So pretty much all of us do. How much do you pay to use these? No one? Come on. You know, Craigslist, they need your money. Facebook needs your money, right? No? Google? No, they don't need your money? Actually, Wikipedia does. But see, there's value creation when there are benefits that accrue to the customer, to the user, to you. Okay? So all of us use Facebook, Wikipedia, LinkedIn, Craigslist, and so on. These companies are creating value for us. Otherwise, we would not be using those products. Does that make sense? They're creating value for us. However, capturing value is hopefully the other side of the coin. When there's value creation, the company pays for the costs. When there's value capture, somebody actually pays for the usage of that product. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean that the user is going to pay directly, but somebody has to pay. When somebody actually pays, then we can say that value has been captured. See the difference? Value creation, Facebook or LinkedIn or whatnot, and value capture when somebody pays. Which in the case of some of these companies, the value is captured in advertising, for instance. Okay? But it doesn't have to be so. Now, much of the rest of this course, I'm going to talk about, when the user actually pays. But that doesn't have to be the case necessarily. Okay? Now, the most successful companies find a way to maximize both value creation and value capture. Both. You have to maximize both. You have to attract users that you create value for, and you have to find a way either for these users and or someone else to pay for that value. Does that make sense? And it's the yin and the yang, value capture and value creation. The companies that have that engine are, the successful companies. Yes?
So I read the story about Craigslist and how they survived through the value creation phase.
Yes.
They could get to value capture driven by customer suggesting prices. Now, how about a normal company that does not have funding or ability to get past that phase?
Craigslist didn't have funding. They never raised money, ever. I mean, Craig Newmark is allergic to VCs.
How did they sustain over the years?
Initially he did it from home, and then, at some point he started charging for rentals in San Francisco, and then that grew, and then he charged for rentals in LA, and then New York, and so on. And now Craigslist, they're not public, but I think they make $200-300 million a year. But they never, ever to my knowledge, got any funding, outside funding. It was an organic growth, if I've ever seen one. Does that make sense? eBay actually grew. They actually raised $5 million, but one of the co-founders told me they actually had that check, on a board like that. They never actually used that money. They actually grew organically very much. They ended up using it, but at some point. But
can you give a quick example using SolarCity? So SolarCity, they create value in the form of installing the solar system product, and they get rewarded in the form of a lease payment.
Yes.
So what value are they capturing?
So SolarCity, do you all know Solar? So the question is, how does SolarCity capture value? So they create value by, installing and financing and, doing the permitting and doing everything for the customer, clearly. How do they capture the value? It's been said by some that SolarCity is actually a financial services company. They actually capture the value of financing these things. Most of it is from finance. So that's how they capture it. Does that make sense?
So they're doing.
Yeah, got it? Good.
Does the government support anyway this? Because it's a new area and high cost?
It's not high cost, but there are. There's the investment tax credit. The solar, like real estate, has a lot of tax implications and financing implications, and long-term finance implications. And the folks who know how to deal with all those pieces can make money, just like in real estate, right? And real estate is very expensive. All right, let's talk about the value proposition. So I talked about value. I want to talk about the value proposition. What is the value proposition? The value prop is a statement of the unique benefits that your product or service delivers to your customer. So I should underline unique benefits that your product or service will deliver to your customer. Okay? So it's a specific application delivering value to a specific user. Does that make sense? Now, I see websites with, here are our 8 value propositions. Huh? Okay? Clearly they don't know. Or clearly they're going after everybody. Okay? Which is not necessarily a good thing if you're a small company. Okay? So if you want to remember long from now how to do value prop, here's what it is. The difference between before you and after you. Okay? Here's you before me. Here's you after me. The difference is me. It's the value proposition. Does that make sense? So, you have to be specific. Increase revenues by 20%. Cut costs by 40%. Save, specific time. Save 20% fuel. Okay? Does that make sense? Very specific. And I'll show you something funny. This is actually a coffee house, but look at before and after, right? So if you drink our coffee, here's how you feel before, and here's how you feel after. So that is a value proposition. Has to be truthful. You know what I mean, right? But that's actually a picture we took in New Zealand. We thought it was so funny. I had to do it, show it in this course. So that's the value proposition. Here's you before, here's you after. Now, when you develop the value proposition, in 10 words or fewer. Describe what the benefits are, not the features, the benefits are to the customer. And let me give you examples. Here's three strong value props. Call anyone on any phone, anywhere in the world at local rates. I don't even have to tell you who that is, right? Call anyone, anywhere, on any phone at local rates. Skype. Now they have some companies, once they grow, they tend to have fuzzy kind of value props. But this was brilliant.
Was that a good acquisition?
Oh, God, horrible acquisition. For eBay, horrible acquisition.
No, didn't they get sold to?
Well, eBay, and then eBay spun it back off, and then Microsoft acquired it. I don't know.
Google Hangout came in between. Google Hangout came in between.
Google Hangout came in between, but were they worth $8 billion? I don't know. Take away laugh lines in less than 1 minute. Brilliant value prop, okay?
What is it?
You see? It's. I think I saw this in Nordstrom or something, right? Saks Fifth Avenue. Take away laugh lines in less than a minute. It's one of these magic potions for $200. I don't know if it works, but the value prop is brilliant, okay? Clean energy, cut heating and cooling costs by up to 80%. Okay? See the difference between let's all be goody, goody, goody and green and cut costs by 80%. This is a strong value prop. Weak value prop, we help people achieve great things through innovative solutions. Shoot me now. The best of the web on your device? What? Hello? Right? So these are terrible value props. They don't tell me anything. Okay? All right. So we're going to see promotion later, but here's a geothermal heat pump company saying that they cut costs by 80%, heating and cooling. All right? Okay, now we can talk about market segments. And I wanted to touch upon value because markets are all about value and all about benefits, not about features, not about technology. Okay? So, let me define a market segment. A market segment is a group of customers or potential customers for a given product, not for the company, for a given product or set of products, preferably a product line, who have a common set of pain, needs, and buying patterns. Buying patterns is very important. And who look to each other for adoption decisions and for purchasing decisions. Okay? This is a market segment. Who look to, and this is important also, this last thing, they look to each other for adoption decisions. Okay? A market segment should be measurable and reachable. You need to be able to reach this market. And you need to be able to say exactly how many of them, how many users or potential users there are. Okay? So, when I started the company called printnation.com, I knew that there were exactly 40,000 small and medium-sized commercial printers in America. See how I'm defining in America, okay? Because commercial printers in Argentina don't reference commercial printers in America. So that was not part of the market. Or in France. Does that make sense? 40,000 measurable commercial printers in America, measurable. reachable. I know exactly where they were, each and every one of them. I had customer lists, I had phone numbers, and all that good stuff. Okay? They definitely reference each other before buying from a company, and so on and so forth. Okay, you need to be very specific. Now, let's start segmenting. How do you segment existing consumer markets? Now, I'm giving you this as a background because we're not going to segment using this. Okay? I'm just giving you a little bit of background. This is the way that most existing companies segment markets. Okay? Now, there are segmentation bases, like demographics. So we say our markets, California residents, urban residents with incomes above $100,000. So we're saying we're segmenting by geography, California, urban, again, geography, demographics, $100,000 or more. Does that make sense? So we use many of these bases or correlates to segment markets. All right? And these are the four main ones: geographic, demographics, psychographics. Psychographics, people, is very important. Okay? What's the difference between psychographics and demographics? Because demographics is the way that it used to be. Psychographics is, the way that folks see themselves. So even existing companies make the mistake of going after, say, 35-year-olds or older, or 35 to 45, or 25 to 35. That's the market that they want to go after. But you know what? It turns out that a lot of folks, if you want to go after the 25 to 35-year-old market, a lot of folks who are 40 or 45 still see themselves as a 30-year-old, right? They're your market. Psychographically, they will shop as if they were 30. Okay? So even though we're not going to use these correlates here, if you have to do it, go after psychographics rather than just demographics. Does this make sense? It's what the customer thinks, not what you think about the customer. Okay? All right. So this is, yes?
You can use psychographics, I take it, when you're developing a positioning strategy. For instance, like your wardrobe, when you're approaching the customer, you should have something that puts the customer at ease, kind of the way that they expect to view you, as a salesperson or something like that.
So when you do your positioning, you have to know, So you, like I said, you have to have your target market, and then you do your positioning based on that target market. So you will know exactly what the psychographics are. So you're right. Does that make sense to people? Okay. So the online dating market by now is very crowded. I mean, it's in the later stages of the adoption life cycle. And I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but there's a ton of online dating market companies. And so these companies, need I say what segments they're going after? See, each one of them is going after a different segment. And that's what happens once markets mature. Now, you still have the general purpose companies, the Match.com and what's the other one? eHarmony, exactly. Those would be the two biggies, right? But there's like dozens of little companies, like not so little, that target very specific folks. Yes. Yes, you can.
So I saw this advertisement on the subway in San Francisco, and it's for online dating positioning. and it says, it's got a girl covering her hands, and it says, Cupid doesn't find matches through a computer, why should you? So they're positioning themselves against Match and OkCupid. I thought that was really
There you go. Brilliant. Brilliant. So they're using that other positioning exercise, right? Against two companies. Okay. So business markets have slightly different bases to segment. So geographic, just like consumer, but here business size, number of employees, revenues, profitability, growth rate, and so on and so forth. So that's one way in which you can segment markets by industry. So SIC code is the government code for every single business in the nation, by urgency, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all ways in which companies segment markets. So, can you tell me a company that segments by urgency? FedEx. You see, if you want it in 4 hours, it's going to cost you this much. We have this product you want it overnight. By 8 a.m., $40. By 3 p.m., $20. 3 days, right? So this is by urgency. How quickly you want it, you have different values for each one of those, target markets. Okay, now, having said all this, I'm going to tell you we're not going to use any of that stuff. Or actually, that's not going to be our primary goal. Because, especially when you segment new markets, there's no data. How do you segment a market that does not exist? Or that's an emerging market. So you hope it will exist, or it exists, but it's 1% of what you expect it to be. Okay? So what we're going to do is bottom-up segmentation, which is going to be slightly different, actually very different from the top-down that most existing companies in existing markets will do. Okay, and it's a 5-step process. So back to our Unobtainium product. Okay, 5 steps. Number 1, feel the pain. Feel the pain. You start by thinking of a potential customer. A person, not a market, a person, a specific person with a job title, okay, or with a function. Now, I'm going to assume that mostly it's going to be a business segmentation at this point, but it doesn't have to be. So when you do this, I want you to think of a real person, okay, with a name. Okay, example, Niall is an independent truck driver. It's a person and a title or a function. Understand your potential customer. Now, understand means if you can live a day in the life or do your best to understand, right? Study the workflow. Study the workflow. What that means is, okay, when does Niall get to work? What are his tools? What are his resources? What does he do? Describe a day in the life without your product. Okay? You got to understand that. Create scenarios where your product is being used by this potential customer. So describe scenarios where Niall is going to use your product. Okay? Describe the pain, the need or want that's going to get Niall, not Allison, to seek or consider buying your product. Okay? I mean, why would Niall even return your phone call? Right? Why would he bother returning your phone call? Because he has a pain. That's why. And if you don't find the pain, don't bother. Find it. That's your first thing. Feel the pain. And to do that, you have to understand the workflow. 2, list the applications or uses of your product. So our technology that converts heat to power still is a technology, so we can still conceptualize what products we can develop. Okay? What specific applications and what uses can you think of for this technology? Okay? Be specific, be creative. Okay? Use verbs if you're imagining new applications. Let me give you examples. So we know that this technology converts heat to power, but there are different circumstances. There are different types of heat. Okay? So you can convert exhaust from the tailpipe to power. You can convert metal heat to power. Maybe you can attach this to something, right? And convert that to power. Convert sunlight heat to power. So, basically you can be a substitute for PV, for instance. Just put it on the roof of something and convert sunlight to power. You're going to use the heat, not the photons like PV. Convert brake heat to power. See where I'm going? There are different manifestations of heat to power. Find them. Okay? And note that an application is not a benefit. So the fact that we can convert exhaust heat to power is still not a benefit. We need to find out what the benefit is to the specific customers. Okay? Does that make sense? Yes?
Can you describe or give an example of the use of verbs? It says use of verbs if you imagine.
Convert. That's a verb. Yeah? Download. That's a verb. Okay? Save. That's a verb. Does that make sense? Increase. That's a verb. Develop the value proposition for this one specific customer, for Niall. Now, each use of this technology is going to have a different value proposition. There's not an overwhelming value prop for this customer. Each application is going to have a different value prop. So, convert exhaust heat to power. Maybe the value prop, if you put this thing in the tailpipe of the truck, is going to save them 30% fuel costs. That's a very clear value prop. Save 30% on your fuel costs. Yes?
Yeah, so anyway, so when you're going back through, you do this whole process over and over and over to keep refining things.
Yes?
Once you have the different applications, you can then go through based on the customers that you're targeting and assigning different values for each application. Is that right?
Yes, let me get there. You're 2 steps ahead of me. Okay. Does this make sense so far? For each application, for each use, there's a different value prop for this one potential customer. So you do this. Number 4, you list other potential users. So we started with Niall, who's an independent truck driver, but again, users are specific. Show me a name, show me a title. All right? So here are 4 examples that I came up with at Starbucks in Menlo Park, right? Sophia is a suburban car owner. Stuart is the office building operations manager in a large, city office building. Diego is a coal plant manager. Sarah's a data center operations manager. So these are very different types of customers or potential customers. So you may want to be as specific, think about 10. I went through 300, which is a bit much, when I did my business plan for Print Nation. Took me a few months, but you may want to start with 4, 5, 6, or 10. And then what you're going to come up with as a step 5 is a value proposition matrix. So for each potential user and each potential use or application, describe the value proposition. Okay? See, each cell is going to be different because the value prop for each combination of potential user and potential users is going to be different. Okay? Whether it's save 20% on fuel costs or lower power consumption by 10% or whatnot, each one of these cells is going to be different. Does this make sense? So you need to go step by step. So what's going to happen is that the segments are going to come from the bottom, not the top. So one of your market segments is the group of Niles. And you can further segment this by saying, you know what? I want to go after all independent truck drivers in America. Or I want to go after just the independent truck drivers in the Midwest and Southwest, depending on where you find the value prop. Or I want to go after independent truck drivers with trucks that are older than 10 years, because these are the fuel inefficient trucks. So we're making assumptions here, right? This is how segments emerge from the value prop, from potential users, and from potential uses. Okay? So each one of these is going to be a market segment. Does that make sense?
Why do you call it bottom up?
Huh?
Why do you call it bottom up? Because you start with the user?
Why do I call it?
Why do you call it bottom up?
Oh, because I start with one user and then I add up to a segment, rather than the conventional way of saying, I'm going to go after all, California drivers who make more than 100,000. That's from there to a specific user. Does that make sense? That's why it's a bottom up, rather than the usual top down. And this is how the segments emerge. Now, we still haven't decided what our target market is going to be, and we're going to choose just one. So again, segmentation is a 5-step process. Feel the pain, list the applications, develop the value prop for each use and user, and develop the value prop matrix. Question?